Hello everyone and welcome to Team Kimberly-Clark's HBR case study presentation. The title of our case study is Rewarding Consumers for Recycling Behavior. My name is Chris and I'm joined by Justin Guiliano, Camden Melvin, and Tim Strange. So let's talk a little bit about the case study from an overview. Kimberly-Clark is a multinational corporation. Some of their major brands would include Kleenex, Kotex, Cottonelle, Scott, Huggies, and Poise. For the most part, in the corporate world, Kimberly-Clark is known for their toiletry consumer products. As a result, a lot of these products have to be kept sterile, and one of the best ways that they've been able to do it is through the use of plastic film. And the stuff is not exactly environmentally friendly. So their efforts are to try and reduce the amount of these plastics that are reaching landfills. To be exact, they want to divert 150,000 metric tons in 5 years of these plastics from landfills to proper recycling facilities. And they want to do this through a number of ways. One of them is through their How to Recycle education program. They want to work with stores on trying to get these waste products just from being thrown in the trash, bring them to stores, and then from there they can be properly handled. And also they want to create some kind of consumer rewards program that they can incentivize people to bring them back. And we'll talk a little bit about it later too, but they also want to use better production techniques to try and create less waste process in the actual production side of it.
So moving on to designing and guiding the strategic conversations that were had, there were many ways that Kimberly-Clark was strategically talking about how they were going to end up doing this, how they're going to end up moving this process forward strategic wise. I would say that their language was more feed-forward based because of how they were trying to reduce their landfill products in the next 5 years. So this means that they were looking ahead to the future without looking on the past. Obviously they had to look on the past too as well to see the problems and see what would be brought up in the future that would help them out in trying to reduce these landfill problems. So you could also say that they were looking in the past to see what, they were doing wrong and how to prevent this problem from happening in the future. Being said with that, I believe Kimberly-Clark was scaling up on the curve. Throughout all the partnerships with the major stores like Walmart and the consumer programs, Kimberly-Clark was on the rise of meeting their goal. All of these different programs that they were introducing and different styles of it and all these different partnerships with major stores to try to reduce this landfill problem, I feel like they were definitely on the rise of meeting their goal because of how productive they have been in letting the outside world know that this was a major problem. Most of the strategy discussed in this case was brought up by problems more than opportunities. It was talked about in the case study that there is almost 290 million pounds of landfill because of how many facilities cannot process the film. There were some opportunities through the consumer. There were many opportunities though, like the consumer rewards programs that was mentioned, to return the films and keep them out of the landfill. Obviously 200 million pounds of landfill is a lot. A lot of facilities can't process that much, and so due to this, all those millions and millions of pounds of landfill were being dumped in, and that was not good for the environment or for the people around it. So this comes to reducing landfill creates opportunities for companies like Kimberly-Clark to connect with the community. All the consumer rewards programs and partnerships will help show the people that Kimberly-Clark cares about the cause they are representing. And I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing to take from this strategic-wise. I think they're trying to build a relationship with the community and show that they care about this landfill problem. And because, they make so many of these different products like Kleenex, diapers and stuff like that, they're going to be the main conversation of how that much landfill get poured in. So I think that's super important to know that they have an opportunity here to build a relationship with the community and through all these different surveys that they're sending out. I think the customers really like the consumer rewards programs because it shows that it just gives them a basis on what the problem is and how they're able to help as well, other than Kimberly-Clark. So that was, guiding the strategic conversations.
Next, we want to start exploring strategic opportunities, such as the first question, which is which assets are being considered that were part of the strategy being developed? Well, those are broken up into 4 separate categories: physical assets, network assets, knowledge assets, and capital assets. Within each of these were many examples, but I chose a few of them from the reading. For physical aspects, we look at how KC looked at the collection bins for retail use, the flexible film packaging, and the recycling technology as all physical assets which were in use. Network assets, absolutely we have to bring up the How to Recycle program, the closed loop fund, and the use of retail locations for the dropping off and reconstitution of the recycled items. Knowledge assets, which were some of the more important portions of this, were the metrics from the industry partners, consumer behavior research that was collected, and the circular economy model research. On top of that, when we look at capital assets, there's of course the funding that was garnered through the licensing and reward programs, but more importantly is the community goodwill and the brand recognition for being a leader in this endeavor. The second part of this is that there were 2 questions. Are there an ample amount of assets that were discussed inside the paper, and what linking and leveraging assets were occurring? With the first question, the assets discussed were well established, but throughout the report, that is a snapshot in time, there are no new progresses that can be expressed in the report. Some possibilities to look at, though, would be, say, the innovation towards more environmentally friendly packaging or reusable resources, or how the increase in partnerships allow for a wider net using momentum of their initial success, and what that would look like for the future. When thinking of the linking and leveraging assets, the paper itself brought up many good aspects, such as the closed loop fund or TREX, which allowed for the linking of the technological aspects and how it can help a cleaner process. The How to Recycle's partnership and knowledge sharing was an immediate linkage, better standard adherence, and allowing for more growth for Kimberly-Clark. And there's the possibility, of course, for the consumer voice to be heard via feedback loops and education research. Each of these adds to Kimberly-Clark and allows for growth that wasn't quite as established inside the paper. As mentioned, it was a snapshot in time.
So in the process of working towards a solution, Kimberly-Clark learned a little bit about recycling, and specifically the recycling of single-layer polyethylene film. One of the most important things they learned is that at the time of recording and at the time of the article being written, municipal recycling facilities simply don't have the capacity or the technology to help recycle these plastics. They're more challenging than other plastics to separate out and recycle because a lot of them have impurities. A lot of other plastics have the benefit of being more solid and have weight to them. So all these contribute to the fact that single layer polyethylene film is not easy to work with. So as a result, a lot of these plastics get taken from municipal recycling facilities and they get taken to landfills anyway. So when learning this, Kimberly-Clark decided that they should try and focus their efforts more towards companies like Novelex and Trex. Unfortunately, Novelex, at the time of the article, did not have the capacity to take much more, but it's more of just the idea of using sources that are not MRFs. So Kimberly-Clark would certainly be engaging in a type of strategic opportunity, but they don't have a clear framework described for the way that they're making decisions, who's making decisions. So John Opstein and Daniel Locke, they're mentioned in the article. From their job titles, it would appear that they might have a position of authority to be over the project, but it's not explicitly stated that they're making decisions and leading the project. So to continue the discussion of strategic opportunities that are leveraged to outcomes, Kimberly-Clark was working with a recycling and labeling company before they switched to how to recycle. And it's noted in the article that they switched because the participation that they were getting relative to the cost was a little bit underwhelming. And unfortunately, in the article, it doesn't outline the exact steps that they got to the decision, but it does allude to some of the metrics. And some of those metrics would include cost. How to recycle had an increased scope. They have higher consumer participation with how to recycle, and they're certainly more efficient in their labeling system. Unfortunately, the article does not say exactly who made the decision in the organization. It's mentioned that Kathleen Gauger and Becky Walter, they might be involved in the process. It's that some of their titles are mentioned, but it does not say that they were on some kind of committee that worked through this process. And much like the last example, it's clear that Kimberly-Clark is working towards outcomes. They're leveraging some of the opportunities that they have, and they're making progress, but the exact framework that they're making these decisions based under is not explicitly described, and there might be a process, but the article leaves readers a little bit vague. Okay, so let's move on and talk a little bit about how Kimberly-Clark is creating strategic pathways to accomplishing their goal. So they have demonstrated on multiple levels their transition from talk to action. Now, I think the most reasonable assessment of the case study is that they have started to take action. They still have quite a bit of ways to go to actually accomplish their goal. I think the most compelling case that Kimberly-Clark has transitioned from talk to action would be the development of their three-pronged approach. So they have started in all the areas of committing landfill contribution by reducing some of the waste in their manufacturing process. They have tried to work with consumers on their waste to divert them from landfills to recycling facilities. And also they're working on designs for their existing products. They're going to redesign them to make them more recyclable. So by reducing the waste in these areas and by taking steps, they are certainly working towards meeting their goal. So what they have been working on is definitely a type of Pathfinder project, but not all the details are there yet. So from what we've discussed, it's clear that they're moving towards a solution. They have rough guideposts in place that may not explicitly be defined, but they have guideposts set to make sure that they're kind of working towards a functional solution. But what Kimberly-Clark really needs to take it to the next level is they need to have follow-up meetings, they need to have action plans set up, and they need to have dates where they can take vote and take a look at what they're doing and if it needs to change in order to meet their goal. And I think it's important to commend Kimberly-Clark. When you read through the article, it's clear that they have made progress from beginning to end. But I think what they need is a little bit more structure and some of the tools that we've learned in class to get them to the next step.
Moving on to making ongoing strategic process, Kimberly-Clark's leadership style is more of a collaborative leadership style than traditional, in my opinion. There's not a lot of evidence of the company feeling like there's a traditional hierarchy where like one person is in the company makes a decision. I know there were two people within the company that were really trying to move this process along of how they were going to like strategically communicate with people in order to get their message out. So it just felt like all of the company was working together as one instead of, one person listening and answering to another person above them and then so on and so forth. It just felt like everybody was a part of a team and they were collaborating with one another to get out their main message and goal. The company is obviously working together as a team to accomplish their goals rather than looking up for answers from one person or leader like a traditional leadership style. And I think in this situation, it really helped out because, you need different people putting in different ideas and input, and it's just important for them to be able to talk to each other and bounce ideas off of each other in order to get out their main message and accomplish their goal. And while this was more of a collaborative leadership style, I saw it being led from the side more than anything. They had to let their customers have a say in the style that they led and what their next steps were. There was a quote in there that, giving their stakeholders more of a say in the decision-making process and delivering different kind of surveys for customers to participate in and give them a guide in their own process. I think it's super important. Obviously, you as, employees within the company and partners within the company, you have to be able to, kind of step in when you need to. But I feel like in this case, a lot of it was from the side, and they let their customers and stakeholders, kind of take over and understand what they were trying to do. With the decision-making process, they let their stakeholders, come in and, have a say, and, if this was the right thing to do for the company, or if they needed to do something else. And, the different kind of surveys and rewards programs that they gave out for the customers to participate, obviously gave the customers more of a guide on what their style was and what they were thinking at that time. So I think that was really good for the company to be able to hit their goals in the next 5 or so years. Both characters throughout the case, I thought there were two main characters throughout the case, seemed more content attached than people attached. Obviously, they wanted to get these landfill messages out to the people, but they were more worried about the content and overall message of reducing that landfill. They were both focusing on what could be in the future, with all the ideas of educating people on this topic and putting together ideas and theories. They were more focused on what could be in the exploration aspect. In my opinion, I think, there are times where you can be more content attached than people attached, and I feel like in this situation, it had to be more content attached because of the content at hand. Obviously, they're talking about reducing landfill, 290 million pounds of landfill. That's a big task to complete and try to reduce. So I feel like, they had to be more, content and topic attached, and they obviously had their own people attachments. They have to, you got to have those relationships with stakeholders and customers in order to get that main message out. But, I feel like you have, if you're working on what needs to be done in the future, you have to be more focused on the content and the topic at hand and what you need to accomplish. But I think they did a great job of, kind of doing both. And so, yep.
As we finished looking at our case study, we were asked to look at the 10 rules of strategic doing, and they are: create and maintain a safe space for deep, focused conversations, frame conversations around appreciative questions, uncover hidden assets that people are willing to share, link and leverage assets to create new opportunities, rank all opportunities to find the big easy, the opportunity that will have a big impact but be easy to implement. Convert big easy opportunities into outcome with measurable characteristics. Define at least one Pathfinder project with guideposts to get the collaboration started. Draft and execute a short-term action plan with everyone taking a small step. Set a 30-30 meeting to review progress. And finally, nudge, connect, and promote relentlessly to build new habits of collaboration. As we look through the Kimberly-Clark case study, I found that there were a few of these rules of strategic doing that I saw evident, and they were: uncover hidden assets that people are willing to share, link and leverage assets to create new opportunities, define at least one Pathfinder project with guideposts to get the collaboration started, and draft and execute a short-term action plan. The first one, I see throughout the case study, each organization mentioned has their own asset that they were willing to share and create a recycling system that was overall, it was going to be more effective. The next thing was the connection between Kimberly-Clark and How to Recycle is a great example of leveraging assets together. How to Recycle was doing something already that Kimberly-Clark kind of wanted to implement on their own products, and that is a huge, huge way to increase the productivity of a project like this. The guidepost I saw, How to Recycle, was a big kickstart to the recycling motive. This is a great way to see how consumers would react to these initiatives, and then they could kind of use these guideposts to make their
make the direction of this recycling project more clear. And then the last thing that I saw relevant was the execution of a short-term action plan. Kimberly-Clark had set forth goals that they wanted to reach by 2022. The collaboration of recycling streams was used to execute this plan. The goal was to divert 150,000 metric tons of product and packaging from waste landfills, which isn't a ton in the grand scheme of things, but it was their short-term goal, and I think that they were moving towards that. That being said, these were the strategic rules of doing that were followed, per se. That would mean that the other 6 were not as prevalent. It's easy to say if they were implemented, it would be more fruitful for the organizations like Kimberly-Clark. The biggest thing that could have been done was ranking all the opportunities to find the big easy, because it's such a large-scale issue that they were trying to tackle. So trying to find the lowest hanging fruit might have been something that they could have done effectively. Other than that, I think that there were some flaws in the Kimberly-Clark case study, but also some great learning things as we move through it. Thank you.